Welcome to Healing Your Family Legacy, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 87, Back to School. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
This is Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, helping you heal your family legacy. Today I'm going to talk about back to school. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about back to school, when I was young, I would go back to school and, I might get a new dress, because we all wore dresses then if you were a girl. So you get a new dress and maybe a new pair of shoes and maybe a jacket if the woolen mills man had come by and and you were able to, your parents were able to get you a new jacket. But it's like, there was an eager anticipation. You'd been out, in the summer, at least in my world, you'd been out working in the fields a lot and, being outside, which was my favorite thing. Being outside all the time, whether it's working in the fields, and we had fun doing that, because we were farmers and ranchers. And so, we'd be out, everybody would be out there working in the fields, and we had fun. And, it was work, but, everybody was doing it. So it was kind of like having fun together. But, I was thinking about, and so going back to school, it's like fall was here, the days were shorter, seeing your friends, starting a new class to see, who's your teacher and, where's your desk going to be? And, when you're in junior high, it's like, oh, I have to go from class to class now instead of just one classroom. How am I going to do that? I mean, there are things that were exciting, things that were kind of scary because you didn't know what it was like, because you were just a kid. For me, anyway, this is just an aside, it was like, who am I going to terrorize this year? Which teacher gets my attention this year? But, aside from that, it was just, it's like a very innocent kind of dealing with the world and learning how to move forward in your life. And I think about kids today going back to school. And my heart kind of breaks for them. Breaks a lot, actually, for them. Because I've talked about, have your feelings, right? It's like you say, if I'm angry, I ask myself, what am I angry about? If I can't identify it, it's probably misplaced, or doesn't belong to me, or I'm in an angry mob and I don't know what they're angry about. It's like, and if I have pain, I ask myself, what am I having pain about? And if I can identify it, I deal with it. And I talk about fear. And fear is one of those things that, it's one of the hardest things that we deal with as human beings. And that's why we have so much anxiety disorder. I mean, you look at what is it really? It's fear. Okay. Anxiety is fear. If I have test anxiety, it means I'm afraid of the test. Am I afraid how I'm going to do on the test? Am I afraid to take the test? Do tests looking at them make me feel afraid? Test anxiety is fear. Social anxiety is fear. Fear of how I'm going to be socially, and am I going to be able to do it or not? And, it's like anxiety is fear. And we have an epidemic of anxiety and depression. Okay? Now, if I'm a kid and I'm going back to school, I probably have some anxiety about that, meaning fear. Okay? So let's just call it what it is. If you're a parent and you're getting ready to send your kids back to school, you might be wondering, how am I going to, even when the school shootings happen, how am I going to talk to my kids about this? All right? And let me be clear, because I have worked with adults almost my whole life, and kids too, but mostly adults. And most of those adults for 50 years have been talking to me about their childhood trauma. And I generally ask them, when they tell me that something was going on that scared them, I said, were your parents honest with you about it? And most of the time they say no. They either told me that it wasn't real, or they minimized it, it's not that bad, or they made up a story about it. Oh, well, that didn't really happen. That's all in your imagination. Or they, tried to rationalize it. Well, it only happens in certain neighborhoods. Okay. So I say, do you think now, when you look back on yourself as a child, would you have rather known the truth? And I would say that 95% of the time they said, absolutely. If I would have known the truth, I still might have been afraid, but at least I would have not felt crazy. Because here's the thing about kids, is that their feelings are absolutely right on. Okay? They're absolutely right on. And if you try and tell them not to be afraid of the dark, that doesn't make their fear go away. If you tell them not to be afraid of the monsters under the bed, don't be afraid of that, it doesn't make it go away. Their feelings are innocent and they're real. Okay? So, I think about when I said that, it's like my little grandson, who's wonderful, he's afraid of butterflies. That's all I've been able to see. Or moths. They're kind of in the same family. And so when a butterfly comes up, he just kind of moves behind whatever adult is standing there and grabs onto their leg. And I haven't ever heard anyone say, oh, you don't need to be afraid of butterflies. Hey, facts are, he's afraid of butterflies, and he probably doesn't know why. I mean, we've had conversations about it. Well, maybe he's afraid of butterflies because they move around and flit around and they're inconsistent and unpredictable. Maybe. He's too young to tell us, and he might not know why. But to tell him not to be afraid of butterflies would be ridiculous. What, would he really say, oh, okay, well, I won't be afraid of butterflies anymore? No. And so I think that these kids going back to school right now need to know the facts, not all the lurid facts, okay? They don't need to know why that young man, that young white man usually, went in and shot up the school. They don't need to know the lurid facts about that, and who knows anyway? Most of them commit suicide. But to tell them they don't need to be afraid of that is ridiculous. They're going to be afraid of it. And so you say, okay, look, I know that it's scary to go back to school and then it feels like it's unsafe. But let's just look at the situation. Okay? Let's just look at the facts. Say there were, I don't know offhand, let's just say three schools have people go in and shoot people. All right? And so you say, how many schools are in our town? How many schools are in the state? How many schools are in the country? That's a little math on this. Okay? Because like I said, when someone's afraid, deal with the facts. All right? So let's say you decide before you even have the conversation that you're going to look that up and see if you can determine how many schools are in the town, the state, the country. Let's say there are, I wouldn't even know how to calculate that. But let's just say that there are 1 million schools in the country. And 3 of those schools had someone go in and shoot kids and teachers. Okay? That's really what they're afraid of. They're afraid that they're going to go to school and someone's going to shoot them. So let's talk about what the real story is here so that they at least don't feel crazy. So you say, okay, we have 1 million schools in this country. That's a big number. And 3 of those schools last year had people go in and shoot the kids and the teacher. Not all of them, just some of them, and it was bad enough. Okay? It's horrible. But the possibility that that will happen to you is 3 in 1 million. And even just saying that sounds big. Okay? Even for a first grader, 1 million's a lot. So 3 in 1 million, and it's like, get creative. You can make many, many dots. I don't know if you can make 1 million dots, but you can, here's all these dots, and each one of them is a school. And 3 of them, out of all those millions, were shot, had shooters. And so, that's the probability. Now, you might say, ask them, what are you afraid of? Please tell me. They're going to talk about this. And you need to be willing to talk about it with them. Because I know, I was thinking about this earlier, that when I was going back to school, and when I was in elementary school and all through high school, but in elementary school, I remember the feeling of being powerless and really scared of the fact that we had earthquake drills because we lived in earthquake country, and we actually had earthquakes while I was in school. But bigger than that was the nuclear threat, because we were at the height of the Cold War then. And we had the duck and cover exercises so that, it's like the guy, our principal, would come over the loudspeaker and say, okay, everybody, duck and cover. And off we'd go. We'd go under our desks and we would cover our heads. And somehow, we didn't know. We thought that was going to save us. As I got older, I realized, well, that wasn't a useful thing to do, really, because, well, it's not going to save you from a nuclear attack. But later on, during the Bay of Pigs, when it looked like there really might be a nuclear exchange of some sort, we had these civil defense shelters. They were yellow. They said civil defense. And we had one on our gymnasium. We had one of those signs on our gymnasium because it was kind of underneath the school. But we would do duck and cover, and we would do civil defense drills where, big sirens would go off. And that was an indicator to us that we need to get to a civil defense shelter. And we would run to because we learned where they all were. We'd run to the nearest civil defense shelter. And in my junior high school, that was the gymnasium, or wasn't the gymnasium. It was where our lockers were, where we showered. So we'd all run in there. We'd be all squished together, waiting to see if this was a drill or if it was a real thing. We were really afraid that we were going to have a war. And none of us really knew that if there was a nuclear war, we'd all be wishing we had gone out with the first round because, nuclear or radiation sickness is horrible and all that. So, but that seemed really remote for the most part. And I remember feeling very frightened during that time, especially during the Bay of Pigs, because I was old enough. I was in junior high. I was old enough to kind of get an idea about it. I'd learned about, I'd had history courses. I learned about wars. I learned about what happened in wars. I'd seen, I'd learned about the Holocaust, these things. So I knew that war was really bad. It was really scary. But we didn't have it where I lived, okay? We had wars in Korea when I was young, and then we had war in Vietnam, but we didn't have it in our school, in our town. So we learned about it, but we didn't have it. These children going back to school now, they have way more fear. Unless they've been living in a closet, which is equally abusive, unless they've been living in a closet, they're afraid. And so what you do with fears is you talk about it. What are you afraid of? And let me help you deal with the facts. Here are all these dots, and this is the probability. And then keep asking them, how are you feeling now? Are you still afraid? Tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not afraid and 10 being really afraid. Are you a 5? Are you a 6? Are you a 2? Which one? Or, if they can't do that, just say, are you still afraid? What can I do to help you? Okay? Children will tell you. What can I do to help you? Because they have real fears. It doesn't happen in another country. It happens here. It's been happening here. And it will continue to happen here. My opinion is that, yes, we need more mental health care. Yes, we need to be more aware of, the mental health issues. In fact, I don't think these are real mental health issues. But be what they may, we need to deal with it. What we need less AR guns. We need less AR-15s. We don't need weapons of war in the hands of people who feel entitled and that someone's taken something from them, that they need to go in and let people know that they're really strong and, they'll let everyone know whatever their problem is. And I think, you could say that to them. It's like if kids say, well, what are we going to do about it? You say, well, one of the things we could do is we could take all those weapons and give them back to the military who really actually uses them. But the other thing is that we just need to be aware of how we feel. So if you feel really angry, here's some things that you can do to feel angry. If a child says, how can I be safe at school? I'm afraid that if I go to school that someone will come and kill me. So you go back and you say, that has happened. It has happened. And it's a terrible, horrible thing. And people are trying to be more aware. But here's the probability that it will happen to you. And then help them with that. Here's 1,000,000 dots. There's 1,000,000 a billion stars in the sky. And that's as many schools as there are. And, 3 of those might fall out of the sky. That's not very many. Doesn't make it any less horrible. It just can maybe help a child deal with the fact that, yes, it happens, but it's probably not going to happen to them. And they can always talk to you about it. Because, they're going to have other fears too that come up. It would be really hard to be a kid these days. Really hard. Just ask them. They're the ones with the mental health issues. They're the ones who feel suicidal. Some of them are suicidal. They don't even know what that means. It's a hopeless feeling. It's a helpless feeling. And so helping these children recognize their fears and let them know they can talk about it. Because even if you're fully armed standing in the classroom, if somebody decides to come in and shoot, you're not going to stop them. You're not going to completely stop them. And oh, by the way, how about the fear that somebody might have if they see their parents standing in their classroom with a gun? Do you think that's going to make them feel safe? Now, if you're a little kid, you just see guns as a problem because of what they do. And you can tell them, well, it's not the guns, it's the people that shoot them. It's like, okay, that's not going to make as much sense to them because they might have seen their own parent hold a gun. You don't want them to think, well, that person's now dangerous. It's the gun. It's the gun that kills you. So my opinion has always been to be honest with children and to tell them the truth. They already know what's going on. So if you try and tell them it's not real, it just makes them feel crazy. And they don't trust you. Because at the end of the day, they still know what's going on. And if you're lying about it, if you're trying to make it not real, if you are minimizing it, they know that you're not telling the truth. And so what happens? You lose credibility. So that when you say, you can talk to me about anything, they'll be thinking, yeah, not really. So the things that I'm the most afraid of, the things that are troubling the most, I can't talk to you because you lie to me. Now, I don't think you need to tell them more than they want to know. So, if they're saying, I'm scared, I don't want to go to school, I'm afraid, what are you afraid of? It might not even be the shootings. What are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that I won't get the teacher I want. I'm afraid that I won't be in the same class as my friend. Sometimes that's it. It's like we have our ideas about what they're afraid of. And I talked about that. But we don't really know what their ideas are. It's kind of like when a kid says where babies come from and we give them a full scale, like here's how it all works. And really they just want to know, does it come from a hospital or does it come from a manger? Okay? It's like, what do you want to know? Oh, babies come from, they come from mommy's tummy, mainly. Mommy goes to the hospital, has a baby, brings home. These are little kids, right? They don't need to know the whole deal. They will ask at some point, how does the baby get in mommy's tummy? Then you can tell them in short, but they don't need to know the full scale. Well, people get engaged and then they, and then they decide to get married and, sometimes they have sex before married. Sometimes, it's like they don't need to know all these things. So, even as a therapist, if somebody came in all anxiety ridden and scared, what are you afraid of? Like, well, I'm afraid to be here because I don't like to leave my house. It's dangerous out there. What are you afraid of out there? Are you afraid right now? What are you afraid of in here? Okay. So you start taking it down to where, well, I'm afraid of the air because it's not good air. And I'm afraid to breathe it because there's stuff in it that I know is going to make me sick. Well, in my office, we have air filters that filters out everything. And sometimes that won't completely dissipate it, but it makes people, okay, well, I can sit here then for a little while. So you ask them what they're afraid of. You tell them the truth. You don't need to give them all the salacious details. You tell them the truth. You help them see, if it's about the shootings, you help them see that, yes, it happened. Yes, it happens. Here's the probability. You give it to them on a big, here it is, the big thing, and here you are down here. You also tell them you'll be there. It's like, I'm always here for you. When you're at school, your teachers will be there for you. Your principal will be there for you. Everybody's trying to make things safe. We're doing the best we can, and I think we're going to do it. Okay? And then, God forbid, they have to deal with it. You're there for them, and they know you will be. And that you'll be honest with them. And they can talk to you about what they're afraid of. So that's how I would do it. Because I just think back on our fears. And I think now that if they would have just told us, well, these are big bombs, and chances are if one lands here, that's it. But everybody knows that these are big bombs and they would do a lot of damage. So all the adults in charge are going to try and stop that from happening. In the meantime, we can do these drills. Get you out of class for a few minutes. But fears are, those kinds of fears, if they're based in reality, especially if it has to do with children, they need to be addressed and not minimized, not lied about, not rationalized. Just, here's the fear. Let's see what we can do about it. Let's see how real it is for you. So I hope that everything goes okay. And the little guys that go back to school, that they're safe and that they feel safe. Because they've had a pandemic. They've had so many issues to deal with. And it's up to all the grown-ups to help them. And the only way we can do that is by being honest and asking them what they need. Okay. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Your Family Legacy here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. Healing Your Family Legacy is copyright 2022, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience, with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.